So fair trade might be, according to the marketing literature, one way to get some people to pay more for a cup of coffee, because the coffee's the same. The only difference between fair trade coffee and not fair trade coffee in the cup is nothing. Outside the cup it says fair trade. Inside the cup it says, inside the cup it's the same cup of coffee. So what I might be able to do if I'm a shopkeeper is offer two kinds of coffee, fair trade and not fair trade. And what can I do? Charge a slightly higher price for the fair trade, because I know there are caring people out there who will come in and happily give me even more money for a cup of coffee if they believe in their hearts that it's doing some good. So Tim Harford, a wonderful journalist who writes for the Financial Times and has written a wonderful book called The Undercover Economist, he explored this relationship in the British Starbucks Costa coffee. And I'll use my own neighborhood coffee shop as an example. My neighborhood coffee shop sells fair trade and not fair trade together. And the price difference is 25 cents, 1/4 of $1 US. If you buy not fair trade coffee, lower price fair trade, 25 cents more. Tim Harford is an investigative economics journalist for the Financial Times of London. And he saw that Costa was doing the same thing that my local coffee shop is doing, charging $0.25 extra for fair trade coffee than the other coffee. Now, you and I already know farmers get a guaranteed price of how much? $1.25. Right? That's the guaranteed price. But if every single buyer of a fair trade cup of coffee is paying 25 cents extra, those fair trade farmers should be getting a lot more than $1.25. The math just doesn't make sense. Everybody's giving an extra quarter, and a cup of coffee doesn't require very much coffee. Then most of that 25 cents, most of that $0.25, most of that fair trade premium, it's not going to the farmers, it's getting lost somewhere along the way. It's getting lost at the coffee shop, it's getting lost at equal exchange, it's getting lost at the importer, and most of that extra money that we're paying, especially in the coffee shops, I've done the math. We've all done the math. If we're all giving an extra 25 cents, those farmers should be getting a lot more than $1.25 for a bag of coffee. So in his book, The Undercover Economist, Tim Harford wrote about this experience, and I have a quote. In the book he says, fair trade coffee allowed Costa to find customers who were willing to pay a little more if they had a reason to do so. By ordering a fair trade cappuccino, you sent two messages to Costa. One message they didn't care much about, and that message was, I think that fair trade coffee is a product that should be supported. The second message is the one that Costa was straining to hear. I don't really mind paying a bit extra. I don't really mind paying a bit extra. So they charged an extra 25 cents to nice people, most of which was not getting to the farmers. So moving to the conclusion, well, does fair trade help? We've talked about the problem. Prices are low and volatile, and there's too much coffee. We've talked about the fair trade model, charging a premium and giving farmers a guaranteed price of $1.25. Otherwise, they get the market price. Well, even if fair trade is a possible anti-poverty strategy, it's not very large. Depending on who you ask, and I give a wide range here, since I'm making an argument, I give a very wide range. Depending on who you ask, in a given season, fair trade coffee growers can only sell something between 10% and 50% of their crop to fair trade buyers. The other 50 to 90% just gets sold in the regular coffee market. It gets sold in the regular coffee market. So every fair trade coffee grower, some of that coffee makes it into the market as fair trade. Some of it, because there's no market for it, it just has to be dumped and sold in the conventional coffee market. In addition, fair trade coffee doesn't yet appear to be able to stand very well by itself. 5 European nations, Belgium, Denmark, France, Switzerland, and even the Netherlands, the home of the fair trade movement, the home of Max Havelaar, they all subsidize the fair trade effort because it can't stand on its own. So to bring things to a close, I like to use an example. This isn't mine. There's a political science professor in the United States named Mike Munger who teaches political science at Duke University. And he has this analogy to the Walmart tip jar. And here's how the story goes. In the United States, Walmart is very criticized. And Walmart is criticized because they don't pay wages that are high enough. They pay wages that are too low. Now, the good news is Walmart pays about, according to a critical group, an anti-Walmart group, Walmart pays about $11 for 1 hour of labor. That's about $4 more than the American minimum wage. It's about $4 more than the American minimum wage, but it's less per hour than an average American makes. And it also would leave a family of 4, if they relied only on that income, somewhere below the American poverty line. So some nice people look at hardworking Walmart employees, hardworking Walmart workers, struggling to make ends meet. And these people, they have a good idea. They have a wonderful idea, and the idea is this. Let's put a jar, a tip jar, on by the checkout, by the counter, by the cash register. And people can generously pay a little extra to show their appreciation for the workers at Walmart. So you put up a jar, and on the jar you have a sign. And the sign says, your cashier today and other employees here make less than the average wage in the United States. Please help them out. Well, even if we could get past whether we're comfortable with this idea, that there would be this sign every time that you check out with your groceries, every time that you check out with a t-shirt, even if we could get comfortable with that, suppose it works. And suppose it works very, very well. If Americans are generous, they throw some extra money in the jar, and it raises the wage. Walmart still pays the same, $11, but when you take the tips at the end of the day and you spread them across the Walmart employees, maybe the wage goes from 11 to 14. So far, so good? Fair trade Walmart. Fair trade Walmart workers, 11 to 14. What will begin to happen? Working at Walmart now looks $3 an hour better than it did before the tip jar. Working at Walmart looks better. So what will begin to happen? Applications at Walmart will go up. Walmart now pays $14 an hour, 11 from Walmart and 3 from nice, generous, caring, kind, loving, helping Americans. And it pays $3 better. Applications go up. That's exactly what happens with fair trade coffee, isn't it? Higher price, guaranteed price, lots of applications, $3,200 application fee, looking for 8 years to get inside the fair trade. It works a lot like this Walmart tip jar. So this leads me then this afternoon to 2 discouraging conclusions. At the least, fair trade, it's a charitable effort. A lot of people like to say that fair trade is market-based justice. We can tell ourselves that, but what's happening? American consumers are giving a little extra for a product that's just like the goods that are not fair trade. And as a charitable effort goes, it's not very efficient. Again, especially at my coffee bar. I pay an extra $0.25, almost none of which gets to the farmer. That's very, very sad and very, very discouraging and very disappointing. And at the worst, Costa Coffee is using fair trade to get me to pay more money. At the worst, they don't care about poor farmers. They care about themselves. And they put a fair trade label on to get customers to pay more money than they would ever pay otherwise. But because it says fair trade, they can charge more money. So how can a caring person respond? Well, the sad truths about fair trade are these. Coffee growing will never pay well because there's too much of it. Fair trade efforts, even if they have the best intentions, what will they do? They'll encourage more of the activity that will never pay well. If the reason that growing coffee pays poorly is because there's too much coffee, don't create even stronger incentives to grow even more coffee. All you'll do is have another Vietnam, and another, and another. And the problem is that fair trade makes coffee growing look better. And what happens when something looks more attractive? Colombia grows more coffee, Vietnam grows more coffee. The global poor then, they keep growing coffee instead of doing other things that might pay longer over the longer term. So it's no surprise that for-profit companies like Equal Exchange isn't a charity, it's a for-profit company. And it's no surprise that Equal Exchange in the United States has formed exclusive deals with churches, Catholics, Protestants, relationships with other faith groups, Jewish faith groups, Islamic faith groups, and they have the exclusive distribution inside the churches of their coffee. Why? In the church. That's where all the caring people are. It's an obvious place to go try to sell coffee. And then finally, most coffee drinkers, the literature is clear, most coffee drinkers, they'll only buy coffee, fair trade or not, if it tastes good. So there's a temptation, if you're a fair trade coffee grower, to put bad coffee in fair trade bags. And let me close with this example. I have 2 bags of coffee. The one on the left is delicious. It's mellow, it's mountain grown, the temperature was right, the sun was right, the rain was right, beautiful growing season. That coffee could sell for $1.60. The bag on the left looks the same, but the coffee's not very high quality, and in the open market, the grower could sell it for maybe 90 cents. Now, the fair trade agreement guarantees a minimum $1.25. If you're the coffee grower, which one of these, the one you can sell for $1.60 or the one you can only get 90 cents for, which one would you sell with a fair trade label? I know what I would do. I would sell the $1.60 for $1.60, and I would sell the 90 for $1.25. It's much better that way. So, if both bags were grown fairly by your fair trade cooperative, which one would you label? I would label the one on the right, the one that's inferior, because then instead of 90, you can sell it for $1.25 plus the 10 cents that is given for community project. So what's the answer here? The answer is very simple. And it's the answer that I began with is the introduction. If you want to make more money in your life, what do? Learn a skill, get some experience, get some good recommendations. The same thing is true for poor coffee growers. Poor coffee growers can make more money when their hour at work is more valuable. And how do you make an hour of work more valuable? We know this from history. The answer is better education, better skills in English, better experience, better tools to work with. Better tools make an hour of work more valuable. And these 2 proven ways increase physical capital, the tools, and also the human capital, the productivity that's inside you. Your wisdom, your skills, your education, your knowledge, your experience. And 2 organizations that do that on a global scale are Kiva.org. If you don't write down anything else today, write down these 2 things if you don't know them already. Kiva.org is the website. Kiva.org. What Kiva does is they let rich Westerners loan money to small companies all over the globe. So you could take $25 and lend it to someone who needs $25 desperately to help their business grow. You'll get the money paid back, and because of the technology, because of internet, it's possible for you to lend money to somebody who needs that money badly to do the project they've been dying to do, but they simply lack the tools, they lack the capital to do it. So kiva.org. The other is, the logo on the right is Compassion International. So again, two things, kiva.org, K-I-V-A, and Compassion International. If you don't know Compassion, I've participated in Compassion International for most of my life. I establish a relationship with a child in a poor country. We write letters to each other. I encourage him or her. I ask them how their home life is, how they're doing in school. And every month, I send some financial support. And Compassion makes sure that they get quality education, good nutrition, and they make the investment in that person to help them be more valuable in the global workplace. Good education, good medical treatment, good nutrition. And final points. Technology is making life better all the time for poor coffee growers and poor commodity growers everywhere. With cell phones, you don't have to settle for the price that you can get locally for your coffee crop or your soybean crop. You can use your mobile phone. You can use internet to find out what the price should be and negotiate. Until recently, it wasn't possible. If you were a small coffee grower in a small village in South America, the local buyer would offer you a very small price. And he was the only buyer, so you had little choice. Now with better technology, you have more choices and more information about where your coffee or soybeans or any other crop is more valuable. Again, fair trade, you can put a quarter, you can pay extra for your cup of coffee, but most of it doesn't get to the growers. Buy the coffee you like and save that money that you would have spent on the fair trade coffee and invest it in an NGO that you know and trust and that you believe is doing some good work. And I'll pick on the United States for a minute. Americans are guilty. They've contributed to the problem. Did you know that in the United States it's illegal to buy sugar from any country but the United States? There's a ban. We can't buy sugar from South America. We can't buy it from Central America. It's forbidden. We're not allowed to. Why? To help American sugar growers. Relatively rich American sugar growers we're protecting. When what we should do is stop protecting unfairly American sugar growers and give global sugar growers who are poor access to 320 million more buyers of sugar in the United States. That will help them. That will help them. Not keeping a wall up and keeping the world sugar out. Let's open the doors to trade and let people who are poor, living in poor countries, growing sugar, or maybe not growing sugar, but would if it paid better, let them sell sugar in the United States and give them access to our markets. And in conclusion, believing in markets, it's not magic or hope. We have centuries of understanding about economics. We have an understanding of world history. I have a mobile. Do you? 100 years ago, did they have mobile? How did this happen? Magic? No, it happened because people with good ideas took risks, made investments, tried new things, and today we have mobile phone. And if someone from 100 years ago came to visit Bill Gates today, richest American, Bill Gates, came to visit Bill Gates, they wouldn't be impressed by Bill Gates' big house or the people that he has doing things for him. What would impress them if they visited Bill Gates for a day? People from 100 years ago? Mobile, air conditioning, automobile, good automobile, refrigeration, indoor plumbing. You don't have to go to the bathroom outside. The toilet is inside. Those are the things that make people from 100 years ago would go, wow, this is fascinating. they would be amazed by the things that Bill Gates has that you and I have also. And that's very, very astonishing. And it happens when markets are allowed to operate freely, and rather than encouraging people to continue doing things that will never pay well, instead gives people an opportunity to try new things that will pay better longer. Thank you very much.
So thank you very much for the wonderful good examples. And I think that we have a time to discuss the questions. Maybe not all of you agree with the opinion of Claar. So, please.
Okay. So let me ask some questions. I'm listening to your presentation, and I've got some comments to give, and after that, I'll give also some questions. The first thing I took from your presentation, that you really believe in people's generosity. You really believe that people are good. You believe that people are able to give away the money that they earn, and I think this fair trade, this whole way of helping poor people and fighting the poverty is really like a fairy tale somehow. For me, for a man who lives in this country, I think, for example, that I would rather give those 25 cents, which is 1 Polish zloty, to a poor child in Poland than to give it away to some man that I even don't know in another country. I've made some notes, and for example, why international organizations are I don't know, they are messing around on the world legal market. For example, if in Vietnam they grow coffee, I know it is wrong because there is too much coffee in the world, but if they get better technology, if they make more coffee and on a lower price, it's right. It's legal market. I think we should, in my opinion, I'm sorry if I know it's different from yours, sir. I think it's alright, and it's just the world's going on this way. I think the governments are responsible for the poverty in their countries, and they should deal with it. It is not my personal problem. I know I can help some way, but I don't think there are more people with I don't know how to say, with the good intentions for the world. I think now everyone is really possessed, even possessed by their own problems, and they have time for them. You're Americans, it's completely different. You've grown in a different culture, and I think you believe in a different way of man's heart, of people's heart. And now I would like to ask, why do you think it's a good way to destroy the legal market, destroy the rules that are moving in economics, and why it is, for example, we could, in my opinion, give better technology to countries in South America to fight coffee from Vietnam, and just to make it better on a lower price. I'm sorry. What's your response?
Thank you for those excellent comments and your questions. One thing I know as an economist is that prices are very powerful. Prices are signals, and where they're allowed to operate freely, prices tell producers and even people who aren't currently producing. They tell people thinking about producing what to do more of and what to do less of. When the price of something is very high, then currently existing producers make more because it's good money, and people who are thinking about doing that also enter the market. And it's good for you and me because then, as more entry happens into the market, the price comes down. So prices are very strong signals about what to do more of and what to do less of. And you're exactly right that in the case of fair trade, we're frustrated. We're blocking. There's interference with that price signal. And instead of stopping people from growing coffee because we know there's too much, the opposite is happening. We're encouraging more production because the price is artificially high. So the signal is a distorted signal. Back to your question or your comment about the charity and the giving and the local global issue. I think that everyone's heart is different, based on what their experience was like growing up, based on their faith perspective. I think that influences their values. I agree with you that most people are generous enough to give something to someone. So one way to do it is it's a very serious choice, a serious matter for serious consideration by a caring person thinking about, should I do some good? This professor in a lecture today told me not to buy the Fair Trade coffee, then do I just keep the money in my pocket? My answer to that is no. Give as generally as you feel led, but that's a personal choice. And then find ways to be as effective as possible. Make sure that you're actually doing some good work. And that might be helping someone down the street from you, rather than that you know and see and interact with, and you can see the difference, rather than to try to help someone on the other side of the globe that you'll never be connected with. Let me be very clear here. Charity and generosity is a wonderful thing. We have fair trade everything in my family, but we know who's doing the hard work. We know who's not doing the hard work. We know who probably ate the last sweets. We know the names, and we know who to go to when things aren't working well. And we give generously when somebody needs generous giving. But when the information is poor, then it's difficult to know exactly who to help, how much to help, because it's difficult to see the difference. And it's also, economists say we lack the particular knowledge about not only their situation, but also their plans, their hopes, their dreams. And so I agree that it's a matter of personal choice. And if a person does these things, then if you're going to give $1, give it in a way that makes a lot of difference, not small difference. Thank you very much.
So, please.
Thank you very much. First, thank you very much for your presentation.
My pleasure.
So, I'm from Azerbaijan. I want to ask some questions. As you know, this country is like my country, is very high custom taxes. So, talking about free economy, liberal economy, free trade, I want to ask, what will happen if we increase these taxes? What will happen with our owners, with our products? Will it kill our economy, or will it increase our economy?
So the question is about international trade restrictions, tariffs, quotas, international, and mostly tariffs. And for those in the room who, I think everyone's familiar with how a tariff works, but just to summarize, a tariff is like one more tax, and it's a tax on the importation of a good from some other country. So if I'm a car tire dealer in the United States, right now if I want to buy some tires from China, I have to pay an extra 35% in taxes for the privilege of buying those tires from China. And where does that 35% in taxes go? It goes to, in my case, the United States government. So if a set of tires would have cost $100, now that set costs me $135. $100 goes to the Chinese company that's making them, and $35 goes to the United States government, to the U.S. Treasury. And why do we do this? Why do we have higher taxes on our own people? To help the American tire makers, the American tire companies. So tire companies work very hard. They lobby their representatives in the legislature in order to introduce these tariffs and quotas or to keep them higher. And the arguments, there are many arguments for tariffs, that you will sacrifice jobs within the importing country in the protected industries. There are also arguments about, one is called an infant industry argument, that if an industry is new in your country, you should give it a chance. You should treat it like a baby. And don't let it go out on the playground and fight with other businesses. Instead, tip the playing field and make other companies that want to do business in your own country, make them impose this tax. And then a third argument that sometimes comes up is there's a national defense argument. And sometimes this comes with food and other goods, that if you went to war, you wouldn't have anybody to buy oil from, not in your case, of course, but you have other countries that you couldn't buy these goods from. And so in the event of war, well, you must have stable industries of every kind, especially essential ones like oil. Most economists think those arguments aren't valid. And the reason is an idea from economics that's 250 years old called comparative advantage. And the story is very simple. Americans with cars buy tires. Let them buy inexpensive tires. That's the argument. Give them the inexpensive tires. So will they buy tires from a Chinese firm and import some of the tires? Yes, absolutely. But then they'll have money left to buy other goods and services also, wherever those goods and services are produced. So the lowering of these barriers is bad for the protected industries, but it's unambiguously good for the people in the country who want quality goods at low prices. They have limited incomes, and they want to make those incomes go as far as possible. So I'm a very strong free trade advocate. One American economist refers to free trade, or this comparative advantage, as the roundabout way to being rich. Rather than do everything yourself, it saves time to have someone else do it. I don't know about you, every article of clothing I'm wearing today, I bought it in a shop. Should I tell that secret? My tie, my jacket, my shirt, every item, I bought it in a shop. Why? Wouldn't it have been cheaper to make it myself? It's free if I make it myself, isn't it? No, I have better things to do with my time, even with a limited income. I have better things to do, and it's easier and cheaper and more efficient for my time to buy my clothing from someone who can do it well and at low prices, and then use my time to do good things like come meet with you in Poland. And it's a good use of my time.
Yeah. What you have said it was written also by Frederick Basset and Henry Hasley in very famous books, so one of a reason of reading that. So, any comments, please?
I'd like to say that I teach English to students at university, and I also teach English to business. And I suppose that the group gathered here is pretty well aware of what you're talking about. But my observation is that in a group of 20 students I regularly have, about one, maybe two, have ever heard of fair trade as such. And I recently went to a lesson with a businessman, and he was very preoccupied with demonstrating how he drives a Land Rover, how he wears Armani, how he's wearing a Rolex. And at that point I commented, like, why not a Patek Philippe? And you know, I said to him, I'm wearing an organic shirt made of fair trade silk and organic cotton and flax, and we were speaking a completely different language. Right. So I'm wondering here, like, your presentation is structured for people of Western Europe, I would say, for people of, you know, the United States. How would you structure it for people in developing countries who are not involved in fair trade benefits? That's one thing. And secondarily, do you think, because businessmen here are so preoccupied with their Land Rovers and stuff, are we going to miss the fair trade thing and maybe move on to what you were talking about? Are we going to miss that fad? Because it is a fad, right?
So let me sort of answer that in two parts, because there were sort of two parts there.
Right.
One is when I wrote the book, and you're right, it was targeted largely to, because I didn't know it would be translated into Polish and some other languages. At the time, it was written for American Protestants and Catholics, American faith groups, is who it was written to. And so I was very careful in the language, not strident, not not a champion for fair trade. In fact, I spend several pages at the beginning making very clear that the point is to make life better for the poor. And if we do that, we should be doing it well. In fact, it's insulting if we try and try and try, but our efforts are ineffective efforts. So it was written that way, you're exactly right. Another thing that I'll say about the writing in the book is, I have wonderful friends and people that I used to go to church with in Michigan who are fair trade fans. In fact, there's one lovely woman, her name is Elaine, and she was the first woman in our local church who began selling fair trade coffee after the services. And in my church, I sang in the choir, and I mean, Elaine thinks she's saving the world, and that's great, and I would never tell her otherwise. And people exchange. Have they gotten exclusive deals with faith groups like my church? Yes. But I would never tell them to knock it off. The hardest moment was when the priest, one day he was in his sermon, in his talk, he was convincing the people that they should be working hard and doing better things. And one of the things that he said was, and be sure to buy the fair trade coffee at the end of the service. All the money goes to charity. Those were his exact words. Now, I know that's not true at all, and it was all I could do to resist afterward going up and saying, you can't tell people that every penny that they're giving this morning is going to go to a poor person when most of the money is getting lost along the way, mostly at Equal Exchanges operations in Boston. So that's sort of one part of the book. I mean, you're exactly right. It was written in a careful way to people of faith in a Western market where fair trade is widespread. The other big part there is, economic growth. It reminds me also of Basquiat. Economic growth is exciting, and at the same time, it's stressful. And the reason is that 20 years ago, no one could have predicted Bill Gates would die a famous man, and we would all have iPhones. I'm sorry, Steve Jobs would die a famous man, and we would all have iPhones. No one knew. No one could have predicted it. No one had any idea that there would be this small web device that we would carry in our pockets. No one could have known. And how did it happen? Because Steve Jobs and his partner worked in a garage in Southern California in the 1970s. And in most of the 1990s, Apple computers lost money. Most years they were big, big losers. The money coming in was smaller than the money that they were spending. Yet somehow they turned it around and that company was profitable. Very profitable, beginning with the iMac. So I'm very hopeful as an economist. Sometimes they call economics the dismal scientist because we look at the limitations and what can be accomplished today and what cannot because resources are scarce. I'm very hopeful, but my hope lies in what cannot be seen. And why am I hopeful? Because of the history of economic growth and development. That whenever people have an opportunity to try something new, the way to make money in a global economy, whether you're a rich guy or a poor guy, is find something other people need and deliver it either at a lower price than someone else or better than someone else. And that's one of the reasons it makes me so angry that we continue to these protections of American farmers. In fact, it's no surprise to me that we have no import restrictions on coffee in the United States. Why? You can't grow coffee in the United States. If you could, we would protect it. So I would like to see human beings treated as equals and to knock down these barriers and give people an opportunity. And it's risky and it's uncomfortable to know that the new thing, we can't anticipate today what will be profitable and create jobs and create value. But what we need to do is give people an opportunity to try and sometimes fail, but ultimately succeed and grow their own lives and also the global economy also.
Coming back to your question, I think that in Poland we are still observing a growing number of people engaged in the fair trade. Even that person who taught me, he was unfortunately was not able to stay with us. He is a representative of that. In Wrocław we have the Szczypta Świata in Ida Stworza Street or the restaurant on Świętego Antoniego Street. I think that we are engaged in that, and to some extent it's necessary to disseminate this kind of knowledge, not to repeat the errors made by the Americans and some other Western society. It's one of the reasons of it. And the second is what I would like to say. This person was great that he was not staying with us and not asking, but he said that he will organize the meeting of the pro and against the free trade, and there will be a second act of your lecture done in Polish. He wrote the review of your book 80 pages long. So
it's longer than the book.
Yeah.
And I should also mention that the dialogue is happening. Once the book was published in Polish and it was also reported in the news, I immediately had some emails from some Polish fair trade organizations who wanted to begin some dialogue.
Yeah. So any comments, any questions? We have still 4 minutes because we ought to finish just 4:45. So it's possible to communicate with Professor Claar via email, or you may ask me. I think that we will not close the discussion. Just your lecture will be the beginning of the discussion, what was said by this person. So I think that we will thank Professor Claar for a nice lecture, and maybe next time you will visit us and give us the next one. Thank you.